one of the main things you're not going. Maybe you've heard of this. Maybe you have. One of the main things that turned America around and caused them to fight for their independence was a pamphlet. Thomas Paine wrote a pamphlet. Do y'all know what the name of it was? How'd you know? I'm proud of you. Good answer right there. Yeah, he wrote a paper on just plain old common sense. The American people read it and said, yeah, it makes sense to us. And so the revolution is another one of the things that helped the people to get involved in the revolution. Matter of fact, 6 months after he wrote that paper, they signed the Declaration of Independence. So these people got involved because of reading in those days. There's so many other good things in here that that we could talk about, and all of it. And I hope the main thing I'm trying to get to across is this: we had grievances against the King of England, against King George, and against the English Parliament. They imposed rules upon us. They even said we're no longer under your sovereignty. They took and they killed people. They raided farms. They burnt houses. And as I told you earlier, Frederick Muhlenberg, our first Speaker of the House, sat and watched them burn his church. And then when he got ready to start fighting. And my question today is, when do we fight? Right now, I think we're at fight on paper. I think we're at fight on the vote. That's where it has to be, because we're coming up right now. And so the final straw was not because they wanted to be free from England. It's because they were forced to be to live and survive. So the American people loved the English. They loved England as their country. But there was a point there where they finally had to make the break. And when they did, there was this general called George Washington who had been raised earlier years, that he was like a colonel, and he was just something extra special. And they appointed General George Washington to man the troops. One of the best things they ever did. And now y'all heard the story about Bulletproof George Washington. Y'all heard it? Okay. Did you hear it, Rick? Bulletproof George Washington? George was in battle, and he got shot 4 times right here in his chest without a wound or anything. When he managed off his horse, he had shrapnel all in his hair, and he wrote a letter to his mother and said, "Mom, I had two horses shot off from underneath me and 4 holes in my vest." And they call him Bulletproof George Washington. Okay, Article 1, Section 1. We call it the legislative branch in our Constitution. It is so important that we study and look at some of what our forefathers said before we actually get into the Constitution, so we begin to understand where this is coming from. So when we hear this, when we hear that they've given us these things right now, now, by the way, let me share something with you. The Constitution was written. Do you know where the separation of church and power came from? Pardon? Yeah, but in the Bible, where did it come from? Jeremiah 17:9. Yeah, that's one of the reasons they based it on. The 4 branches of government, about having different branches of government, came out of Isaiah 33:22. Isn't that cool? And then the republicanism, guidelines for choosing leaders, is in Exodus 18:21. Remember what God did there? He had to build the what? The tabernacle. He gave them all different gifts, and He empowered them. Remember? Gave them gifts. And each one of these had different gifts to do the work that they needed to. You see, they got all these principles out of the Bible, or most of them. That's the reason why they say 94% of the Constitution is right out of the Bible. And then tax exemption for churches. Ezra 7:24. When y'all get a chance to read that once in a while. Okay, so Article 1, Section 1. I'm reading, and by the way, let me say this again to y'all tonight. And Rick, I'm not here. I'm going to. Okay, I want to get you to just turn over there and go to the first one, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And we all need to have a copy of these. And if you'll be real careful, don't get those pages out of order. I appreciate it. Right there's the first one. And I'm going to read it. And the new one, this is adjusted. This is after they've already done all the amendments and everything to it. And it says, all the lawmaking powers granted by this agreement will be entrusted to a Congress of the United States. Congress will consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives. Why the Senate? And why do they have 6-year terms? They represent the state. Okay, why then did the House have a House of Representatives and only let him serve 2 years? They wanted fresh people in the Congress every year and wanted them to go back and work and come back to Congress, work and come back to Congress, so they would be in Congress with a working knowledge of where the American people are hurting, and they could deal and apply laws and rules appropriately. It was for the people, for us. That's why you only had 2 years. And can you imagine? They had to travel, what, week, 2, 3 weeks, something to get to Washington to serve? And in 2 or 3 weeks, what it was to get back home? By wagon, by horse, whatever it was. And all of this was designed, and our forefathers were looked at very carefully. They didn't want anybody to get the upper hand and to rule us like we're being ruled right now. And that's sad. Now, so we have the Congress is made up of the Senate and the House of Representatives. We know that, don't we? Article 1, Section 2. It says, the House of Representatives shall be composed of members chosen every second year by the people of several states, and the electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislature. Each state decides who to vote. Each state says who can actually be the electors. Now, for Republican and Democrats, when do we elect our electors? Our electoral college is elected when? Convention. The Democratic Convention. The Republican Convention. That's when our electors are elected. See, we do not have a constitutional right to vote for president, do we? Now think about it. Think about it. We do not have the constitutional right to cast the vote for president. Our electors cast that vote. Now, our forefathers thought that that was the best way to preserve, protect, and build a buffer between a democratic society or a Republican society, and this is a buffer between the two of them, and that right there is one of the deciding factors. You do away with the Electoral College, you'll do away with this buffer that they've set. Go by public for election. When you go by numbers, New York, California, the big states will all win the election. Y'all understand electoral votes, don't you? The electorals vote in that area. So there may have been 2 million people vote for one of the parties, and yet they only have the electorals come to speak for them. But if they went by public, the winner of the public election, the most popular election, then California, New York, Dallas would have something. The big cities would rule us, and we would not have a voice in president. Did y'all see that? Is the Electoral College a good thing? Our forefathers thought it was. And they thought it protected us and protected our republic. So, it's something to think about. The discussion is coming up. Let's do away with the Electoral College. Well, I don't even get to vote for president. Our Constitution says you're not supposed to vote for president. You only give our Electoral College the right to vote for the president because the Electoral College represents the people in the states. And so one state could be 90% for a candidate. They still have a couple electoral votes, or the electoral votes are designated to them. And then, but if we did that, but let's go to a popular election. Let's just all vote and let's proclaim him president. We lose our vote. Did you know that? Our little old town out here, our little section, maybe our state, because we won't get a fair vote. And so that's the reason why they established the Electoral College. And so, so the members of the House of Representatives shall be elected every 2 years by the people in each of the states. Each state has a standard it uses to decide who is allowed to vote for its state legislature. The same standard must be used to determine who is allowed to vote for members of House of Representatives. Whatever standard the state uses, that's the standard that you have to use for your representative. And if our representative defaults and we kick him out during his term, we're supposed to have an election to replace him. We only got 2-year terms. Well, what are we going to do? if we'll have a quick election to get somebody back up there to take his place. Probably won't happen. We'll probably wait till the next election. Okay, that's section 2 now, and point 100. Now section 2, point 3. Let's see, no, 2.2 is a representative must be at 25 years of age. Okay, a citizen of the United States for 7 years. At the time he or she is elected, the representative must be a resident of the state that elected him or her. Now, the old one don't quite read that away, but this is brought down to the 1828 definition, and it is revised a little bit here where we can read it easier. So a representative must be 25 years old. He must be a citizen for 7 years. And at the time he or she is elected, they can be any state that they live in, right? Any state, wherever they're from, it doesn't make any difference what state. Right, yeah. They can't be from Missouri and come in here and hold an office. They got to be from this state. Why would we want somebody from another state to come and hold office anyway?
They have to live in their district also.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Okay, point 3 of the Constitution. The number of representatives that each state has will be based upon the population of each state. Now, remember, there's some things in here and some resolutions and some things changed. This is already taken into consideration, the changes, all right? So we're going to read this correct. So will direct taxes, except for income tax. Let me read that again, direct taxes. The number of representatives that each state has will be based upon the population of each state. So will direct taxes, taxes are direct to us, except for income tax. For these purposes, the population will count everybody except Indians. Did you know the Indians who are not taxpayers? Did y'all know that? It's in our Constitution, Indians. The right to vote may be denied to any resident in any state. The right to vote may not be denied to any resident in any state who is at least age 18 years old. If you're 18 years old, you have the right to vote. This includes the right to vote for President and Vice President of the United States, representatives in Congress, as well as the governor, judges, and legislators of that state. If any state prevents or hinders any eligible person from voting unless they participate in rebellion or other crimes, the number of representatives that the state is entitled to will be reduced in proportion. So, okay, what do? First of all, we have representatives. And direct taxes, income tax at one point was not considered to be a direct tax, and but later we had a resolution where we were allowed to have income tax. Interesting, isn't it? For these purposes, the population will count everybody. In other words, the census that we take is going to count everybody, but who? The Indians. Why are the Indians not counted? Why? They're a nation. We have an Indian nation right up here in Oklahoma. We got the Cherokee. We got the 5 or 6 civilized tribes in Oklahoma. These Indians don't pay any taxes, and they're not counted in our census. Kind of interesting. They've got a casino just across the border up there. The Indians have the casino. Do you think they're being taxed on it? You think they have to pay taxes on it? They're guided by Indian law. One of the smartest things the Indians ever did was educate their kids, send them to law school. And you know what? The Indians found a new way to scalp the white man. And you go to a casino, you're going to get scalped. Amen? Amen?
Also, there's a whole bunch of people that go up to Grant. You see
Yes.
them all the time. And they go and buy their cigarettes or their tobacco products and their beer, and they don't pay taxes. And you see people going in there and buying 6 and 7 cartons and just carrying them out.
Yep, that's like I say then.
In
There's
Alaska,
some benefits to being an Indian sometimes, wasn't there? And we took away their land, remember?
in Alaska, the natives there can kill as many black bears as they want to, but a white American cannot. You have a limit, you have to have the license and all of that.
Hmm.
And they have their houses, and the Americans have a Indian group, and they thought best thing for them was to put indoor plumbing. And so they did, and it would get stopped up with, trash and everything else, or they would use it for their feet to be washed. And if they have a motorcycle or a four-wheeler, and riding somewhere, and it gets sick or it gets wrecked, they call them their Indian agent, and they need a new one, and they get it. They get everything that they want.
Every Indian gets paid so much every month from the Indian reservations.
But they also get a lot of other stuff, too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff.